Now, before we get started actually building anything, I want to go over a few things that you should know before you actually start putting anything together. You need to know the reasonings behind the way we're doing it and the order that we're doing it. Now, you see I have a little sample section here of the panel that we're building. This is the top, which is basically where all the goodness is going on. Everything in the bottom of our design is just getting mounted into some concrete. So this is where everything is happening. So what I wanted to show you is a couple things that aren't actually in the design from the concept catalog that we've added just to simplify the process to make our job faster and easier, both building and installing. Now, the first thing you might notice in the design that is not listed in the catalog is actually we've added some flat bar to the top of our panel. Now, why did we do that? Well, because I'm thinking of how are we going to mount this thing to the top of the porch? Now, the design doesn't call for anything. It's just we have our cast pieces and then we have our 1-inch tubing. Now, there's nothing up there to bolt to. So what we'd have to do is actually have to drill our holes in our cast pieces here. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, if you've never done this before, drilling holes in these, kind of a pain in the butt. Not only is the holes kind of a pain in the butt to drill, but the mounting is kind of a pain in the butt to drill. Because for one, you're running into, okay, where am I gonna drill the holes so that I actually have room to get a bolt or lag screw in there, for one. And two, depending on where it is that you're mounting, the type of porch or anything like that, you know, you gotta use certain size anchors to mount this stuff with. And this doesn't give you a lot of room to use anything big, not at all. And you also have your width to consider. The bigger the hole you have, the less structurally sound this cast is going to be up here. We're going to avoid that whole process. So basically, what we're doing is we're putting the panel together just like the design says in the catalog, and we're just going to add a piece of flat bar that we're going to go ahead and pre-drill our mount holes in. That way we can just set this flat bar right on top. It doesn't interfere with the design. It's basically going to be hidden from plain view, and once it's painted, no one's going to know. That way we can just set this up on the porch, run our bolts through, boom, we're done. Now, not every design is going to be able to have this easy of a fix, but I just want you to know this because when you're planning out these designs, go ahead and think in the beginning, how am I going to mount this? What is the material that I have to work with, and how am I going to mount that material? Now I want to go over the order of the steps that we're building this particular design. Now, this really does matter in how you're building it. Our side panels here, I'm calling them our wings. These are actually going to be the last things that we weld on. Just simply because they're on the outside, there's the least amount of welding going on with these pieces. So these I actually do last. Now this is the important part. This is our middle panel. We have all these castings running up and down, and we have our 1-inch tube on either side. Now, you might think it'd be, since we're welding these panels together and they're all the same, you might think it'd be easier to just go ahead and weld all these together like this and have that done. Well, that's not how I like to do it. Now, here's why. Not all of these castings are identical, like completely identical. You can have some pieces that stick out maybe, you know, 1/8 of an inch or even sometimes 1/4 of an inch or more, and you need to kind of grind those down a little bit. It's just the nature of the beast. These things are made in a foundry. They're not formed steel like steel tubing is. So what we like to do is we're actually going to set the castings aside, and we are actually going to build our rectangular frame first. And the reason we're doing this is because I know without a shadow of a doubt that I could build a rectangle frame and have it perfectly square. That way I know that because this is the outside of my panel. If this is off, these pieces are off, that is what you're going to be able to see visually by looking at this porch. You're going to be able to tell that these panels are not square. And that could happen very easily if you were to weld the casts together and use that as your base point to build everything off of. So we're building our frame first, and then we're going to take our panels and put them in the middle then we're gonna weld them together. And that's how we're gonna build that frame. And then once we have that done, our third step is just we're gonna weld on our outer wings here to the top. We'll have something similar to this. And then the last step is we're gonna take our flat bar that has our pre-drilled mount holes, and we're gonna weld that to the top. And then the final step in the build process before going to paint is welding on your feet. For ours, we actually have some cool little decorative collars that actually slide onto this 1-inch tubing, go on there, and they have little holes on either side that we can run our anchors through. We're just gonna slide those collars on and weld them directly on there. It's very easy. The other type of mounts you could use is just those plates, the little square plates to go on the bottom, and those have the 4 mounting holes already pre-drilled into them. You can get those from kingmetals.com. Highly recommend it, saves you a lot of time. Just remember that if you do use those mount plates, to go ahead and drill your little recess hole in the middle. Now, we've made a video on this in the past, so go ahead and look that up, but it allows any sort of water that could build up into that tube to drain out the bottom and not be seen. So now that we've gone over the process and the order in which we're gonna build this design, and a few things that you should really consider before you even start building anything, let's go ahead and start building this design. So I'll see you in the next video to start putting this together.